Welcome back to another episode of our Future 101. Today we have a very special guest, for second year, University of Guelph student, Leah, here to share her story and her experiences over the last few months. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah.
So my name is Leah. I'm a second year psychology major at the University of Guelph. And my story begins in the summer when I got the shot, the COVID shot. And I really wasn't expecting much because basically all my friends didn't have any sort of reaction to it. Maybe their arm hurt or they had a bit of a headache. So I didn't think much of it. 3 days later, middle of my day, not, just doing something mundane, I was hit with the worst chest pains I've ever had in my life. And I was like curled up in a fetal position, like leaning forward, trying to take deep breaths, but it was making it worse. And I was panicking. And so I reached out to a doctor that I know, and she said, listen, there's this condition. It's called, there's two, myocarditis and pericarditis, the inflammation of either the heart or the sac around the heart. And it's most common in younger males, but you should just get that checked out in the hospital just to, make sure you're clear and everything. Just check that out. You should go to the hospital. I'm thinking, oh my God, I have to go to the hospital. Like I'm freaking out. But I go and my chest pains are pretty consistent and I'm waiting in the ER and I get checked out. They do these tests on me and they come back and they tell me the tests are clear. Thank God. So I'm like, you know what? Thank God. This is great. They're clear. But I asked the ER doctor, I'm like, should I consider doing more tests? Because, this did happen and it was pretty severe. And he's like, wait it out and stuff. But I was like, and then I asked him, I'm like, should I consider, not getting my second dose? And he was like, no, like you should get your second dose. And I was like, he's like, this condition that we're testing you for is much more likely to occur if you have COVID than if you have the vaccine. It's like, okay, that wasn't exactly what I was asking. Hopefully I don't have COVID. So I was kind of asking about the shot, but I was exhausted. I left and I was just like, luckily the tests are fine. Didn't think much of it. 3 days after that, so this is 6 days after I got the shot, again, just doing some work, completely mundane thing. And all of a sudden, I feel this weird sensation in my face. And I remember like touching like the top of my cheek and it felt really weird and it started to feel numb. Not like numb in the sense that I couldn't move it, God forbid, but like it was just, it didn't feel right. Like my face started to feel really weird. And so this was like the whole left side of my face and also like the back of my head on the left side. So I'm panicking and I'm like, oh my God, what is happening to me? And I could speak and stuff, but it was like feeling a bit weird to speak. And I was like, oh my God. And it lasted like 5 hours and I freaked out. So of course I make an appointment with my family physician. This is where this all starts. So I make an appointment with her and I'm like, listen, this happened to me. I just got my COVID shot and it's like 6 days later. First I told her about the chest pains and then I told her about the numbness. And she was like, oh, you must have been really anxious to get your shot, huh? Like, must have been like really, I do get anxiety around like medical things in general, like needles and stuff. So she was like, you must have been really anxious to get the shot. And I was like, no, like this wasn't anxiety related numbness. This was actually like it felt numb. Like my face felt numb. I've never experienced that in my life. And she was like, oh, well, if you're here asking me for an exemption, I'm not giving you one. You don't apply. And at the time, I was even thinking like exemption, like, oh my God, like, because at that time, they mandates were already starting to come out and the idea of not being vaccinated already seemed like I couldn't even face that at the time. So I wasn't even thinking really exemption, but like I was like looking for a medical opinion because this happened to me. And I was like, well, like I just asked that like maybe we, look at this further. And she was like, well, if you're asking for an exemption, like I'm not giving one. Like, great. She didn't send me for more tests or anything. I was like,
Really?
she's just like, I don't know what it is. Just wait it out. It's
So-
probably a side effect. Okay.
So was that the last medical like doctor that you ended up going to see, or did you decide to go elsewhere?
No, no, I saw other places. I
Yeah.
also saw someone on campus,
Okay.
not as relevant to the story, but eventually because my like at this around this time too, eventually the university released a vaccination mandate.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm actually gonna have to be fully vaccinated to go to school.
Hmm.
So I started panicking and I'm like, I was fighting with my mom. I'm like, I need to go to school. Like there's no way. Like last year was first year for me. I was online and I hated it. You know, I lived in residence, I met people, but at the end of the day, like I wanted to be in person very badly. I felt that I deserved that for myself and I just wanted to get an education. Also around this time, friends started to like ask each other, like in social situations, oh, who's fully vaccinated? Are you vaccinated? Are you vaccinated? It wasn't like,
Which one did you get?
yeah, which one did you get? Like, are you team Pfizer or team Moderna? Um, and I remember like sitting there and I would be like, actually, I have one because I had an adverse reaction. I was not comfortable telling people that.
Hmm.
And again, I don't have to disclose that. There's
No.
this whole culture that we feel like people feel it's or their right to like ask people if they're vaccinated. Sometimes it's not even safety related. It's just a socially acceptable thing to ask people.
Yep.
And at the time, I wasn't even sitting with that and getting angry at all. I was just freaking out. So I would just lie to people and say yes, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Um, and I'll explain that later. It just got me into like a hole that I couldn't get out of because I was just lying and lying because
Mhm.
I was afraid of telling the truth.
Mhm.
So already, yeah.
Just going back to the adverse reaction that you had,
Mhm.
this the numbness, the chest pains, was that something that you had over a period of time, or was it like did it occur one time?
Yeah, that's pretty pretty important. I should have elaborated on that.
No, it's
This
okay.
has not gone away.
Wow.
So this was months ago, and so the numbness, all of my symptoms, thank God, have decreased since
Hmm.
a few months after, but these symptoms would be coming back numerous times a week, especially the numbness. Sometimes I would get numbness like twice, three times a week. It gets less, like it lasts less time over time. Like
Hmm.
at the beginning it would last a couple hours. I've had it that recently where it only lasts like 20 minutes. Like it's gotten better, but my symptoms are recurring. And I've told people this, like they haven't gone away.
Hmm.
So I was searching and searching. At this point, I'm like, you know what? Like this is insane. Like I don't feel safe to go. Like I reached like the 21 days where I was eligible to get my second dose, and I was like, I don't feel safe
Hmm.
going to get a second because I don't know if like this is right for me. Like this doesn't seem right. Like no, already the attitudes you get hit with just from shit saying this happened to me,
Hmm.
you already feel like they're gaslighting you already just from
Yeah.
the way they speak to you. Like
Yeah.
they get like irritated and like I just felt like people were very like close-minded about it. People weren't exploring it, and I just felt I didn't feel safe to get my second. Also because people in my life were like some people were really like, there's no way you're doing that to yourself. Like
Hmm.
you could die. You don't know.
It's definitely um I can imagine, like, why would you want to possibly put yourself at risk in that situation again?
100%.
So just going back to your school. So September comes around. How how did the first semester, how was that for you? And how did this reaction that you have affect your education?
So yeah, that goes back to the doctor situation because I
Okay.
was trying to find a doctor who would listen to me
Hmm.
because the numbness was continuing, had chest pains again, and I was like, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. I need to find a doctor who will listen to me. And I found a doctor who listened to me, and she said, you know what, this isn't normal. Like
Hmm.
this is an adverse reaction, and until we explore this further, until we diagnose it, um, you shouldn't be getting your second. It doesn't make sense medically. It doesn't make sense. They don't know what caused it, and they don't know if it could get worse or not.
So in the hospital, did they acknowledge that it was the vaccine that,
They did.
or
I
not
wouldn't say
really?
they didn't.
Okay.
Yeah, no, they did. Um, they weren't like going on about it, but
Hmm.
they didn't say it wasn't
Okay.
cause. Although I did have one situation where I spoke to a psychologist that I'd spoken to like for a good amount of time that really helped me. I returned to her because, as I'll explain, for my first semester, mental health was really bad and I just needed help with like social stuff. And when I told her my story, she went like, you're in psychology. You know that correlation doesn't equal causation. So how could you even say that this reaction was from the vaccine? And I get that correlation doesn't equal
Hmm.
causation. That's science. I 100% understand that. It's my program. But it was just completely invalidating. So then I
Wow.
had to defend myself to a psychologist
To
who's supposed to be there validating me, and I had to explain myself and argue with her that, hey, like there's enough of a correlation for it to be explored further. Like it makes
100%.
sense. I start to feel crazy. Found a doctor, listened to me, and she wrote me. The university had like standard forms, and she wrote me a letter on the form, and they returned it, and they said, cool, you are accepted, your exemption is approved for 1 semester, and after
Okay.
first semester it will expire.
Because it only your reaction, you'll be fine after the semester,
Yeah,
right? It only applies
it
for the
only
first.
my theory was that they wanted to know that my symptoms had disappeared. So I thought,
Yeah.
oh, like maybe in a few months it will have disappeared. And I didn't even want to think about that because I was still
Right.
scared of getting my second at that
Hmm.
point because I hadn't gotten a diagnosis yet.
Hmm.
Um, so I was still nervous, but all I could think about was, okay, I have my first semester. I just have to think about right now.
Hmm.
And so I started going to school, and I had in-person classes, and they were great. Actually, like that was one thing I did have that academic thing. So a condition of my exemption was that they gave me a box of rapid tests, and they said you need to test yourself twice a week. Um, do the rapid test, take a photo of it, write the date, twice a week, and that allows you to like go into campus. It was like on an online system.
Okay.
So I was not the most comfortable with this. It just
Hmm.
didn't seem very secure. And, the whole idea that someone with no symptoms is endangering others, because, prior to that, a year ago, I was with all the other students and we were all equal before the vaccine even existed. And we were all equal. We were all like everyone else. Nobody was said, you're endangering others. That was not a thing. All of a sudden they told me like, you need to do these tests because we need to see if you're like asymptomatic. Um, and there's a whole like mental ordeal with that because that really got to me eventually because it's so shaming.
Yeah, I know a lot of schools, for anyone who did get an exemption accepted, that was one of the conditions was testing, and it's it's another reason why we are fighting this, because we shouldn't have to upload any sort of medical information to a school, especially a test twice a week. And why doesn't everyone else have to do it? Why do you just have to do it? It's really awful.
It's implying that you're not as safe as everyone else.
Yeah.
And I knew in myself that wasn't true,
Hmm.
but it starts to get to you.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden, I started to worry, like, maybe I am contagious, you know? Like, it eventually,
Yeah.
like, after a few months, it started to, like, get into my head. Like, that's so psychological. I call this psychological warfare, this entire mandate situation, because they just get to you and they make you feel crazy. Um, so I was doing these tests and I never missed a day because in
Wow.
my mind, I'm thinking in my mind all the time was that my exemption was going to expire and I needed to create a perfect track record of myself. So I did the most anti-see something on earth where I just complied,
Hmm.
sent in my testing twice a week, always wore my mask above my nose, did not mess with anything because I wanted a perfect track record.
Hmm.
I had two campus clubs that like explicitly asked. The first one, the mandate was at the beginning of the semester, and I had to talk to the person who organizes it. And they were like, "Oh, are you vaccinated?" And I had to tell them I have an exemption. And they were like, "Cool, you're fine to come because you're being tested." Again, you're safe to be here, but only because you're being tested for COVID, which
Hmm.
implies that you're not as safe as everyone else.
Hmm. Just want to tie this in a little bit. Like you said, this is the most anti CSANT thing that you could have done. This is Your story is a very good example of why we are so against getting an exemption, because like you had to go through, you are constantly begging the school for permission to attend campus, to go to your clubs, to whatever it is, and you're willing to do whatever it is that they tell you to do so you can just get your education. And
100%.
I'll say it, I was like that as well back in September, October. If I ended up getting an exemption that was accepted, I was willing to test and to do anything. But at the end of the day, just as easily as they gave you that exemption, they can just take it away from you. And just constantly complying and begging them for permission to participate in the school, participate in society, it really doesn't get us anywhere.
Yeah, and like giving in to your oppressor is not winning
No.
because you're just giving them more and more power over you. Like I remember I would send in applications and then, watch my email and just be shaking and so
Wow.
afraid because my fate was in the hands of everyone
Yep.
but myself. I had no control over the matter. I just had to trust God. I don't know. I had to trust the committee, that they
Yeah.
they had a heart in them. I used to sit. I'm a fairly spiritual person. I used to sit and pray that when they were like reviewing my applications, like that their hearts would open with compassion, that they would see
Yeah.
beyond their like this thing, because they have rules. Like they have like there are 4 reasons, or around like 3 or 4 reasons why someone would need an exemption from the shot. And I never perfectly fit in the criteria. That's where my problem started, because my condition never fit perfectly. It doesn't show up on a test. It's like it happens that no one really believes me. Some people believe me, but they can't prove it, and it's just so. It's very limited, and they do that on purpose because they don't want people getting approved. They don't
Yeah.
want. It looks bad on them too. Like I remember there was this whole thing when there was this students at the school were like they figured out oh, there's 1% that are exempt, and they calculate it and they're like, that's too many students. No, this many students shouldn't even be exempt. It's like,
That's just awful. The
what?
whole I'm sure you're going to go on to share about this, but and your personal experiences with it, but the whole cultural ideas around this are just like you were saying before, if everyone feels so entitled to just ask you if you're vaccinated or not. They feel like it's their right to know your personal medical information, and then they feel like they're entitled to judge you for it, and to like they have a say in what you do with your body. And then if you do have a reaction, they feel like they don't believe you. And it's we need to start changing the way everyone looks at these situations, because it's a cultural battle that we're facing. And the way that, like, 1% is too many that are exempt.
Yeah,
What do they really expect 100% of people to just get vaccinated?
yeah.
It's unrealistic.
It's so,
And
and especially like when you react like that, like you have any kind of allergic reaction to anything, even if you like put on a lotion, you get like a rash, you're not gonna
yeah,
like wear that again. Like, and that's and
exactly.
that's very mild and minor.
Hmm.
So if you have like a weird, I've never reacted to anything like that in my life,
Hmm.
in that way.
I can
So
imagine it's scary. Why
it's
would you want to put
scary,
yourself through
and
that
it
again?
doesn't make sense logically. I'm not a medical expert. I'm not going to pretend I am, but it doesn't make logical sense
Hmm.
to give yourself that again if it
Hmm.
made you sick. It just doesn't make sense.
Hmm.
So yeah, and then I even had back to what I was saying about the testing, which I had a organization that they made a mandate in mid-October because of
Okay.
like pressure from people in the community.
Hmm.
And basically I had, again, this is an organization I was involved with last year. They knew me well, and I had to call and say, listen, can you imagine? I used to go to these things. So this was in mid-October. So I went in September and I was just like everyone else.
Yep.
I had to call and say, listen, like I have a medical exemption. Like I had to tell them. And the organizer said, okay, you can come. That's cool. Um, you have to show me your negative COVID test 48 hours before you come. I was like, oh, but I'm already like being tested on
Yeah.
campus. Oh, that's what our committee decided.
So they want you to test again.
Not necessarily, because I tested in that period
Oh,
already,
okay.
but they needed to know that I was negative before
Hmm.
to give me permission to come. And if I was going like every week, I had to tell them. So I was, and my whole thing, and I wasn't even that, like, I was angry about this, but my whole worry at this time, and I will elaborate on this, my whole worry in first semester is nobody knew about this. Nobody knew that I had an exemption. People
Hmm.
didn't know I had a reaction. People thought I was like everyone else, and that's how I wanted it to be. I was terrified of being found out. Being found out, can you imagine? I got
That
sick. And because of just the judgments of people, and I had doctors tell me, your numbness is benign, it's
yeah,
nothing, like just, so I thought, if this is what doctors are telling me, people are not going to understand.
right.
And I felt crazy, but I knew like people are going to judge me. So I was terrified of being found out. So I was talking to this organizer and I was like, listen, like, I'll do anything, just nobody needs to know, because they had students with like the names and stuff, and I was just like,
Oh,
is it going to be written on the form? Like, I can't have anyone find out. Like, nobody knows. I'm telling both the organizers, like, nobody knows, nobody knows, nobody knows. Barely anybody by life knew. And I basically just, my social life in first semester was akin to like a game of pretend,
yeah.
where I would sit there and they people would talk about COVID, or they talk about other things, and I just like nod. I was like, I thought if I like reiterated the most acceptable COVID things, related things to say, and shoved my beliefs and concerns inside, I could just make it through, get my education, not cause trouble. I just didn't want to be found out, because I was convinced that if people found out the truth about me, they would hate me, and that was the worst possibility out there.
Mhm.
And maybe it sounds a bit like, who cares if they dislike you? Like, just live your life. But when it's your world, I was away for school. It's the people I'm around. It's my community, people that cared about me, and I don't have that many friends. Like, I was gonna lose everything I had in my mind.
That's awful. I mean, I know a lot of people that are just going through the same thing, just scared to tell people and scared that they're going to be treated differently for it. Even if you've, I mean, there's so many instances of families splitting apart over this. And it's like people that you've known for a long time, you know who they are, how, like the kind of person that they are. And then something this irrelevant can tarnish that relationship or whatever it may be. So I think it's completely understandable, and it's so awful that anybody has to go through that feeling of like I don't want anyone to know about this.
Yeah. I agree with you 100%, because there's such a stigma.
Hmm.
And, there's this whole notion of like, there's pro vaxxers and anti vaxxers.
Yeah.
First of all, anti vax, I hate that term, first of all.
Hmm.
Um, you know, it's my theory is that people like to group people and stereotype people because it creates distance. So from their plights, and then they're like, I'm far away from this. So it's easier to judge them. It's easier to criticize them, because when they're human, all of a sudden they're human, and then you start to feel for them, and then you're like, no, like, they're against my beliefs, and I can't. So people will actually like distance themselves, and people don't want to hear any truths that don't align with their belief systems. And I was a walking contradiction of everyone's confirmation bias,
Hmm.
because they all, would say like, oh, people saying that they got sick, like, it's made up, or it's so little, it's so few, it's so rare,
Hmm.
until they're right in front of you. Then what? Right? Um, thank God it doesn't happen to a good amount of people that get the shot. But when it happens to you, what do? Like, you're in front of them,
Hmm.
and you've had a reaction, and they start to label you as like a crazy anomaly to make themselves feel better.
Yeah.
Because I think in general with COVID, there is so much doubt, and people are anxious about the virus itself. And my whole thing was too, people would be afraid to be around me, because the consensus made by a lot of people has been, if they're not fully vaccinated, I'm not safe to be around them. That's what the media says, what the government says, these people are less safe. So then people will, they're worried about the virus. They're worried about catching COVID, and people can get really sick. Like, I get that. So then they will think, I don't want to be around anyone who isn't fully vaccinated. And I'm thinking, well, I had this reaction, and if they knew it was from my first dose instead of my second, they're not going to be safe, feel safe to be around me. And I remember crying and complaining to my mom, why couldn't it have happened after my second dose? Then I would be able to go to school. Then I would be able to be like everyone else. And maybe I talk about my story and stuff, but I can't, because it was after my first, so I have to keep it a secret. Like, I thought, I can't tell anyone.
Wow.
Um, but I've since learned that it's not my fault if people feel unsafe to be around me. I'm not selfish. I'm not making them sick. If they believe that, they need to deal with that. Like, there's a certain level of that you have to have, like, compassion for people, but you also have to take care of yourself. And I was just sacrificing everything for others. And I realized, like, this is hurting me in the process. Like, I'm not responsible if people feel unsafe.
100%. So you're now here sharing your story with us and with everyone watching. How did you, what happened, what changed your mind from wanting to hide, not tell anybody, keep it a secret, keep your beliefs a secret, your story a secret? What happened to make you want to now come and share it with everyone?
That is a great question. So, I I basically remember this whole thing of like I would walk through campus and I would feel wide awake because at this point, like I started to really like realize that the mandates were unjust and what was going on with me. Like I remember like when I do my testing, like I try not to think about it or I try to like distract myself, listen to music, be on the phone so I'd forget that I was testing myself for COVID twice a week
Hmm.
because it was so horrible. But it gets to you. And I knew what was happening to me was completely unjust. The mandates made me sick to my stomach. I knew that there were students who were being deregistered from class. I had friends, I had conversations with friends where they would like talk about people that got deregistered and like smile and say, oh, they're so stupid. Why didn't they just get the shot? I'd like start hyperventilating.
Wow.
Instead of like, you know, giving them like a maybe a different thought process or offering a second opinion, I would just get anxious and like start to hyperventilate. I had this whole thing where I would avoid any COVID related conversation. My therapist told me to tell people, oh, I don't really like talking about COVID, like let's just not talk about it because if you just said the word COVID, then they'd start going, oh, damn those anti-vaxxers, like. And I couldn't even be in the room with it
Hmm.
because I was completely, it was completely internal and I didn't want anyone finding out. I was afraid people were going to ask me.
Yeah.
And I remember this feeling of walking through campus wide awake. I knew what was going on, but I didn't say anything. I had the frustration. I was angry, but instead of using that frustration to do something about it and fight it, I actually wished to be asleep like everyone else.
Right.
I used to just get so angry. I avoided talking to certain people like on the phone who were talking to me about like protests and people fighting the mandates. I was like, no, like, no, not for me,
Hmm.
not for me. Like I avoided it like the plague. I just wished that I just didn't know about it and I didn't get sick and I just was vaccinated like everyone else and I was fine and nothing, none of this. This wasn't my movie. I didn't want. I just like yelled. I yelled at God. I was like, why are you doing this to me? Like, why me? Why do you make me? Why do you make me go through this? So in first semester, I took. This is where I started to find my voice. I was enrolled in a creative writing class, and so I've loved writing like since elementary school. I've always been an avid writer, and I just took this creative writing class, and we had like an assignment due like every week, and I didn't plan for this at all, but every once in a while, like I would have they were very open assignments, and I would start to find myself writing, not necessarily about COVID, not necessarily about mandates, but about my emotions through it. My anxiety was very high. My entire semester was I'm so afraid to be found out. So you know how that like takes a toll on you.
Yeah.
So I started writing about it. I wrote a play. This one thing I wrote a
Amazing.
play. It was about this vampire and the vampire figured out he was a vampire and didn't want to be found out as a vampire and then just he made out with this girl and he cut her with his fangs and she reported him to the police and then the town hall meeting was all about what do we do with this vampire roaming our streets. Oh, capital punishment, throw him in jail, murder him, all that, like I
That's
said.
really interesting.
So then the vampire has this whole monologue. It's like, everyone treats me so different and I don't want to be a vampire. I just want to be like everyone else. And then they murder him. Oh, I spoiled my own play. Sorry. It's only like a 5-page play. It was very short.
They
But
murdered him?
yeah, like
No.
like the government or like the schools. It was a metaphor. And I went to class and I was assigned to read that day. And
Oh,
I
wow.
signed myself up to read for the like week we were writing plays before I wrote this play. And I came to class and I was very proud of the piece of writing in general. And I didn't say anything about it. So my professor has a thing where he's like, after we finish, everyone like I gave everyone parts and they finished the play. He said, "Don't talk, don't talk." And everyone started discussing it. And the professor looks me in the eye, and says, "You know what? I think this is about COVID."
Really?
And I looked at him and I was like, yes, yes, it's about COVID. And that seems so mundane, but that moment of like that was like the first time I like spoke and like said,
So that was like your moment where it's like, I'm gonna start sharing. I'm gonna use my voice about this. Like, did it give
"Mm,
you confidence
no,
saying
I
that?
wasn't there yet.
Not yet?
I was still, it was the middle of the semester. I was still afraid of being found out, still wasn't telling anyone, but that was like the first moment where like it was an empowering moment for me.
That's amazing.
And it was a cute play. Like
Yeah.
it really wasn't, it was just a metaphor. It wasn't like I didn't say anything. But throughout the semester, I was writing stuff. But what really got me angry was, like I said, my exemption was going to expire. And basically, what they wrote to me in September when they approved my exemption was, in order to be approved for second semester, your doctor or specialist has to basically write a letter outline exactly how the vaccine is contraindicated given your condition. So at this point, I'm still waiting on tests. I'm still like, it takes our healthcare system takes a long time to see specialists. So my doctor, it was in November, and she wrote a very lengthy thing. Again, my symptoms are still continuing, and this is still early on, so they're still bad. Like, I remember full on trying to do work, hands numb, harder to type. Just, I remember sitting in social situations, feeling numb, not saying anything about it.
Wow.
Like, I was still suffering, but I was silent. My doctor wrote all my symptoms, the duration stuff. Again, violation of my privacy.
100%.
But again,
Like,
I was
who's
just
reading this?
first I was like, the first thing is I just want to go to school, and the second thing is no one must find out. If they deny me, then everyone's going to know. What if I go home? Then everyone's going to get suspicious and everyone's going to find out. And I was still so afraid of being found out. It became a complete psychological thing for me. Because I lied to people. And once you start lying, you start digging a hole deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
And even my closest friends didn't know, really. I was so quiet about it. I would talk to people on the phone that knew in like code. And if I had like confidential calls with like medical professionals or anything, I would go down to like the river by downtown and like take my calls there. I didn't want to be near people that like were in my life that would know. Like I was so discreet. I didn't want anyone knowing, and I was paranoid. Every time someone gave me like a side eye, every time someone like, seemed off with me or something, like I was like, oh, they found out somehow.
Wow.
So my doctor writes this note, and I'm just thinking, I want to be on campus, I want to go to school, and I don't want anyone to find out. Very, very detailed letter. A whole month goes by, and course selection comes by. I register for in-person classes. That's what they told me to do because I'm still waiting. My anxiety is through the roof, and in my head, I'm like, if I get denied, I won't survive this. Like I didn't know what I would do. Like I honestly didn't know what I would do if I couldn't go to school. Like it sounds so, like it sounds stupid out loud. Like
It really isn't.
my entire life was there, and I didn't know what I would do without, like, if people knew about me. Like, I was so, and it's ironic because I'm speaking now publicly on a podcast, but it took a while. But they came back mid-December, so I'd finished my final exams. I was, registered for in-person classes. They come back to me a month later, and they tell me, your exemption was denied. Why was it denied? Well, they said that if you have an adverse reaction, your doctor's supposed to report it to public health. And public health is supposed to advise you on what to do. I was like,
so your own doctor can't advise you to not take a shot anymore? It has to go through public health? Really?
First of all, they didn't tell me that. So they took a whole month to process it. They could have told me. I could have actually gone, my doctor could have gone. I spoke to so many medical professionals before the doctor I was currently working with that knew what happened to me and didn't report it. Wow. So a lot of people heard about what happened to me and didn't report it. So also, since when they didn't tell me I needed this, so I didn't prepare it, but I actually did. Like, my doctor filled out a form. We reached out to public health, but they said it's a 4 to 8 week time till you get a recommendation from public health. Oh my God. So I emailed. This was the first time I directly emailed the committee that's in charge of the decisions, and I told them my story, even though they would have known my story. And I told them how well I complied. I told them I tested twice a week, never once tested positive for COVID. I was very good. I was a great compliant student. Please let me go to school. No, and I told them, I'm like, nobody informed me that I needed a letter from public health. If I was told, I would have received it. But I would have like applied for it. But in the meantime, while I'm waiting, can I just attend school? Like I've been such a compliant student. Like I'll comply again, please. Basically, I didn't use the word complying, but that's basically what I was asking. Yeah. And they said no. They said until you have a letter from public health that says it's contraindicated, we're not hearing your case. So they didn't tell me I needed a letter. They told me I need a letter from my doctor back in September. They didn't update me that I needed a letter from public health. Then I told them I actually was getting a letter. They said, no, sorry, until you have that letter, we can't help you.
Wow.
So I remember reading that, and I cried for like the first hour. But for so long, people were telling me on the phone, like, Leah, like my mom would tell me, like, get angry. Like the
Mm-hmm.
whole first semester, like, you're so afraid. Get angry. This is
Mm-hmm.
wrong. And I was like, I don't know. Like, maybe I am not. Like, maybe I do need a test. Like, maybe I'm not. Like, I was completely afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't want to say anything. All of a sudden, I got angry for the first time.
There we go.
Through my veins, like angry. I got up, I sat at my computer, and I started just writing.
Mm-hmm.
This just writing. Like I didn't know what to do with myself. I just got up,
That's
I
just your
started
outlet to
writing.
just, yeah.
Yeah, that was the first thing I did. And then I went outside, I took a walk, and I said, okay, I have no idea how to proceed, but this has happened, and I'm very mad. Mad as hell. I'm still sick,
Mm-hmm.
and they're treating me like I'm a criminal.
Yeah.
Like I'm applying, like I have to apply for the right to attend school, and then they say no.
They're
Like,
treating everyone in these situations like a second-class citizen who doesn't
mhm,
deserve to participate in the same things as everyone else unless we get special permission from them to do it.
100%. So then they take away all our power, and they say you need to beg us to go to school. Then you need to follow our rules, and they still treat you like a second-class citizen.
Mm-hmm.
Like being an exempt student is not a piece of cake. Like there were still places that asked for it that I avoided. Um, It was not perfect by no means at all. Not a fun experience. Like I got my classes,
Mm-hmm.
but I was by no means treated equally. I did not feel equal. I still felt that discrimination. It was not fun. And then after all that, after all the mental turmoil, they just say nope, sorry. Um, so I had switched to online classes, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna fight this. I'm done. I'm done
That's
staying silent.
amazing. So, what's your current situation now? Are you still in school or?
Yeah, so Guelph isn't like those stupid schools like McMaster that says, "Oh, you can't do online classes." Yeah, you can't even enroll in online classes. What is that? I'm
I
sorry.
don't know.
What is that? They allow me to do online classes. So
Okay.
my prereqs are not my prereqs, so like things I have to get to graduate are completely mixed up. Like I had to do a statistics course. I was supposed to do a statistics course this semester, not offered online. A bunch of things weren't offered online. I had to change my entire timetable. I'm taking third year courses to make up for like that I'm gonna have to take second year courses next year, and it's a disaster. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely now not gonna graduate in 4 years. I already feel like I wasn't going to, but it
Mm-hmm.
just made it worse. Like, and I'm lucky in a sense that I could even do classes, um, because a lot of students, like I said, like certain schools don't even let you do online classes, and it's like even if you want to fight and fight the mandate to get involved, you're still getting you still need to like continue in school. Like your degree doesn't stop necessarily. You're gonna drop out. Like so, it's really like beneficial to stay in school. I also like I really like didn't know what I would do with myself for 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
So I did. I switched to online classes. Um, but then the big thing that happened was I thought, I'm gonna live at school.
Mm-hmm.
I'll maybe go home quite a bit because eh, vibes aren't good there
Yeah.
all the time. So I thought, but I can study on campus. Like they don't go off, they don't like stand at the doors and like check.
Mm-hmm.
And no one will know. Like I'm again wear my mask, super compliant.
Yeah.
And I can just live my life and nobody will figure out. Then in January, the university announces that they are checking the Wi-Fi and the single sign-on, which is like when you log in to what's called CourseLink, like our platform
Yeah.
and our email. They're checking it for compliance. So anyone who logs in to single sign-on on campus,
That's
they
crazy.
it is so creepy.
That is such an invasion of privacy.
100%. Privacy's not a thing anymore.
No,
Privacy was canceled last year.
it really was. Wow. I've I've heard rumors about things like that going on, or when you use your student card to get into places that they like kind of can track that as well. But the Wi-Fi thing, that's crazy.
So they check for compliance with the mandate, and then if you're not in compliance, they say progressive measures will be taken. So what are progressive measures? So they had a town hall and people asked them, like I know this, people asked them like, what are progressive measures? Don't answer. Don't answer.
Really?
They did not answer to the questions. They don't want to talk to you. They hide in their committee. They don't want you. That's why I emailed them back like when in December and like I made myself known. I told them, what major I'm in and told them how it's been taking such a toll on my mental health. Like I wanted them to know. Hi, like I said, people do that. They distance themselves because people's truths that don't align with theirs are scary. People's stories are scary, and a lot of the time people don't. They just want to hear what fits into their confirmation bias, um, and they don't want to question anything because if you have this belief for so long, you're holding on to this belief about COVID and about the shots and about who's safe and who's not, and then you have someone in your face who's questioning you. That's terrifying. People don't want to question.
No, it scares people, and it doesn't allow them to accept that there's potentially other explanations for things and other maybe they are wrong. They don't want to accept that. They don't want to accept that there are things that contradict what they believe in or what the media is telling them to believe in. You can see it everywhere. It's happening all the time, and
For sure. It's honestly like that's why I call it like it's like psychological warfare at this point
it
because it's
really
like
is.
they really like hub at you. They just want to hear their curated version of the truth. They don't want to hear your truth. They don't want to question themselves. They have their belief systems. Anything that contradicts that said belief system is scary. They don't want to face it. They don't want to mess with that. So that's they were checking like back to what I was saying before,
Yeah.
checking the Wi-Fi for compliance. So I'm thinking, oh my gosh, now I can't even study on campus. They're gonna find me. And around this time, I had started getting involved with CSON, and I'd been to a few, gatherings and like events with CSON, and already there's this. I started to get to realize that there's this big non-compliance component to CSON. We don't want to comply with anything. We don't want to comply with mandates. We don't want to disclose any medical information. So that includes testing. And some people in CSUN, this was so nerve-wracking to me at the beginning that people that just didn't wear masks.
Yeah.
That was something I had to get even wrap my own head around. Can you imagine and now I'm here speaking on the podcast, but like at the beginning I was like, wow, like these people are so militant and I was scared. Like I'm like, oh, but my story's like I did comply. Are they going to judge me? Like,
No.
I was so, no, of
The
course
whole
not.
point of this is that no one has the right to judge anyone for any personal decisions that they're making for themselves, and no one even has the right to ask and to know what those decisions are. So it's not about vaccinated, unvaccinated. It really, really isn't at all.
Yeah, because it's like at the end of the day, like, both vax and unvax people are getting and spreading COVID. Like, it's happening. I'm not here talking about science, but like, it sucked. Like, I was treated like I was the only person who was, and I was the only
Like
one
you're
who had to get
sick,
tested.
like you're
Like, I'm sick,
diseased.
like, I'm diseased, like, I'm a second class citizen.
Yeah.
And that was one thing that really appealed to me about CSON is they're like, why should we have to disclose? Why should we have to comply? I never thought about that because, of course, I was uncomfortable sending in doctor's letter. I didn't know who had access to that information. For all I knew, my professors could see it.
Yeah.
I just tried blind faith that they couldn't, but I didn't know. Nobody told you. Nobody told me that this information. I think they said like this information's under this Privacy Act, but I didn't really know like
the whole exemption process is very unorganized and for a lot of schools. So you don't know who's reading these emails. You don't know where this information is going.
for sure. And if you look at like the committees, it's not I don't want to say like I think it's different for every school, but like it's not always like medical doctors on the committees. It's like different like people from like different organizations on
Who's to
campus.
say that your reason for not getting vaccinated is not valid?
Yeah.
Like who's to say, like, how can anyone feel entitled that they can make that decision for you?
And it's not like they like spoke to me. Like it's not like they like the university like said like, hey, like we know you got sick. Like the email they sent me, the when they denied me, they were like, okay, we denied you. Upload your proof of vaccination immediately. It's like, I just told you I got
so insensitive
sick.
to your situation.
They should include like the we're here for you mental health
Oh
hotlines on all
yeah.
their emails because they're so distressing. Like they're honestly so distressing. But they don't care because it's hidden. And even while I was a student, like I complied with, all my testing or whatever, but they would send these occasional emails to, I guess, any of the students who had an exemption that would be like, we know that some of you aren't sending in your tests. You need to send them in because we are watching and we know. So, you're going to get in trouble. So you need to send in your tests. Like,
Wow.
this is all threatening emails. Half the time they don't even address you by name, which is almost worse because you just feel so alienated.
Hmm.
And the culture around me, people just accepted. Like they knew that people were being deregistered from classes, I think, to an extent. They knew that people weren't getting, weren't being accommodated, and they were okay with that. They were okay with people not being allowed to attend school.
Hmm.
They were happy because they were accommodated. They got the shot. They felt great. They felt safe. They needed everyone around them to be safe, and they didn't care. Like I said, people limit themselves because they're so scared to like let go of that. And puts people like me in such a position. Um, yeah, and so the university was like, so I actually like went on campus, or I don't think I went on campus. I like lived pretty close to campus, and I was getting like groceries,
Hmm.
so my phone must have like connected to the Wi-Fi.
Really?
A few days later, I got an email that said, "We know, we know you were on campus. This is a few weeks ago.
Wow.
If you come back to campus, we might issue a notice of trespass against you." A
That
notice
is
of
insane.
trespass on my own campus. I was safe last semester,
Yeah.
fully safe. They were like, "Cool, you can be here," and now all of a
But
sudden, I am a
nothing
non-compliant
has
student.
changed. Nothing has changed. The situation hasn't changed. The only thing that's changed is they said you're not allowed to be here anymore.
Their decision and their policies changed. My medical situation didn't change. It's
No.
still persisting. It's been months. I'm still sick. Like, and in my personal like journey with that, I've now been seeing specialists and stuff, but like, to the university's knowledge, I'm still sick. I told them I'm still sick. I still don't have a diagnosis. I am still reacting. They know that their policies changed.
Hmm.
My theory is they want less exempt students at their school because it makes them look bad.
Hmm.
If their number is a bit high or whatever, or maybe they just do this for fun. I don't know. It's the worst.
I'm
Like,
not sure what the motives are behind it, but just to tie all of this into why it's so important that we're fighting and into CSON and what our philosophy is all about in terms of, like we mentioned this before, not accepting accommodations and exemptions and not fighting for those. There's a lot of groups that are, you know, fighting against the mandates that have a different mentality than we do, and they are practically begging the schools, just please let us go to school and we'll do whatever you want. And this right here is why we are not doing that, because they put you through so much, and I'm sure you're not the only student that has gone through this. They put you through so much in the end just to deny you and say no, and you are constantly at the mercy of them and whatever policies they decide they want to put in place that day.
for
And
sure.
at the end of the day, has it got you anywhere? Has it got any of us anywhere by accepting those exemptions? I mean, we don't we're not making any progress
Yeah,
by.
we're just giving into the system. So we're
Mhm.
looking at the people that are discriminating against us and oppressing us and going, okay, cool. We're not happy with you, but we're gonna beg you and get on our knees, do
Mhm.
whatever you need us to do, we will do. We just
Mhm.
we just want to be accepted. But like that's just giving them more power. And that's what I
100%.
learned. And I'm like, you know what? Like I I 100% understand why people seek exemptions, and I speak today to any student like me who got sick
Mhm.
from the first dose and went for an exemption. I get that. I understand.
So do
I
I.
I do, and I had a great first semester at school. I love being in in-person classes, but at the end of the day, you have to look around and see how many students are being deregistered, how many students don't have a place, and it's of course about you. I would say it's personal, and it's also like it's also a greater good thing for me because I feel more empowered, I feel more confident in my convictions, and I feel more valid in my story than I ever have in my life since getting involved in CSOT. getting involved with CSANS and like going to events and like meeting people like me and just owning my story that this happened to me and it's valid and not gaslighting myself anymore.
That's amazing.
At the end of the day too, it's like there's also a greater good component where it's like look around at all the students that have been deregistered, even from online classes. What are you doing to fight for those students? Like, because in first semester, I was just like focusing on myself and my own story and my own experience, which again, I didn't know anyone else like me and I was struggling, completely valid. I get that. But if I'm speaking kind of to viewers watching this, if people have it in them that they have the confidence in themselves and they're safe to do so to fight, you're gonna meet people like you, and there are so many stories out there. And if we don't fight this now, what's gonna happen a few months down the line? Like this, we are students. I've learned this in CSAT, like that we're young and being enrolled in academic institutions, like we have a voice, and we should use it for good. And the narrative I was in school was there was no one speaking like me. So I thought, oh, they're gonna think I'm like uneducated. They're gonna think I'm nuts, and I don't want to say anything. But if there are more students like us that come out, oh look, like they're not like middle-aged Karens or whatever. That's like the stereotype that everyone like paints on anyone who speaks out. And again, that group differs. We're not all grouped in one.
Mm-hmm.
People differ even within anyone who's against the mandates. Doesn't mean we're all the same, but it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the mandates are discriminatory, and if you don't agree and it's safe to do so, I would say like to people like that it's good to fight. Like it feels so good to fight.
Yes, it definitely does. I can say that from my own personal experiences. It feels so much better when you feel confident in your convictions and you're actually not afraid to do something about them anymore. So I'm so glad that you came on today to share your story, and I really hope that it makes people realize what's really going on here, to even to students who chose to get vaccinated. And it's not about unvaccinated and vaccinated. We're all being affected in this, and hopefully it inspires students or anyone else that is in a similar situation to you to come out and to share their story, because it's so important that these stories start being heard. So thank you so much for being on today. If anyone would like to get involved with us in our organization, go to csont.ca and contact us. Thank you so much.